Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. Thank you so much for being here because I've got a very, very wonderful guest with me. Her name is Dondi Scumaci. Dondi is an international speaker, author, and mentoring thought leader. Her business career spans more than 20 years. She's a sought-after consultant for leadership development, professional conferences, keynote presentations, and corporate mentoring strategies. Her dynamic presentations and consultations have made a proven, lasting impact on organizations across the United States, Canada, Europe, the UK, Australia, South Africa, and Kenya. Dondi, welcome so much to the Entrepreneur's Inner Game podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I'm really can't wait to jump into your mindset, your thinking, and how it's helped you to build up this wonderful success that you have. But let's start at the beginning and how you started getting into this work and how your thinking played a part in it for you to start thinking big and really start creating this wonderful stage that you now have from where, you share your vision with the world.
It really was kind of an evolution, a little bit organic, but also a little risky, right? I was a banker and I was an executive for a couple of banks in the States, and I was in charge of the customer experience and the sales force. So that included a lot of mindset, right? It included a lot of what people are believing about their role and about their possibility and about their impact and how they can help. And I fell in love with that piece, and I fell out of love with all of the other, the data and the numbers and the acquisitions and the, legal things. And I just was so in love with the development of people and really helping them unlock their potential and release their potential, because I think that there is so much of our lives where the potential, I think, we come fully loaded with gifts to the planet, but I don't think that they have batteries included, right? I think that to open our gifts with to develop them. So when I made the decision it was kind of a painful time actually in my career. I was feeling very unsatisfied. I was kind of slipping in my confidence a little bit. I think that happens when we're not working in the grain, I guess, of our strengths and our talents. I felt like I was sort of, pulled away from the things that I loved the most, and the energy wasn't there, the passion wasn't there. And I made a decision to become a consultant, which is really just code for unemployed at that moment in time, really. And I took the big leap. And what I was believing at that time is that really I was born for something bigger, not bigger in terms of money, even not bigger in terms of working harder, but that there was something calling me and I needed to answer that call. And it was, the first few years were, a bit of a struggle, and I had to keep reminding myself who I am, what I believe in, the value that I drive. And now, all of these years later, I find myself more in love with my job than when I first started, and really having the kind of impact that I want to have. So, and I think that gets to that whole, your why, like staying close to your why. Why are you doing this? Why does it matter? Why is it important? What is the benefit that it drives? And what is the impact that it has? And so those are some of the messages that I share with others, but also those are some of the internal messages that I use to motivate and keep myself, right, find my own north and keep pointed directly towards my north.
And what about the times when it feels a bit of a drag and your energy dips and then you lose sight of your why? How do you keep going during those times?
There are going to be those seasons. I think that there are seasons of stepping back and reflecting. And when I'm not feeling motivated, or even when I'm feeling more negative things like anxious, right? Where I'm fearful, or I call it low grade dread, right? Where you can't put your finger on it, but there's a feeling that something's not right or something's happening. Maybe I'm losing a little bit of control. There are things I don't control, obviously, in all of our lives. And really one of the best strategies that I have for that is I'm a big journaler, right? And I look for the patterns and trends to the journal. But I will stop and I will ask myself, what am I feeling? And I will put a name to that. Is it fear? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it confusion? I will name the emotion. I'm not going to let any emotion run around in my head unnamed, kind of lurking there, wreaking havoc with my results and my peace, right? My peace of mind. I think it's really interesting. I love the book by Sean Achor, The Happiness Advantage. And one of the things is there's a lot of science in that book about mindset and our emotions and how those things really play a role. And he talks about the fact that if you were to scan a brain under someone who's stressed out or fearful or anxious, if you were to run a brain scan at that moment in time, only a very narrow portion of the brain would actually be activated. It's that portion that's just designed to keep us alive, right? That primal survival piece of our brain. But when you scan a brain that is relaxed and feeling positive emotions, the whole thing is lighting up, right? And so I think it's a bit of a paradox when we need those resources the most, right? Under stress, anxiety, when things are hard, then when we need the access to that creativity, the innovation, the positivity, the optimism, that's when the brain kind of narrows. So anything I can do to step back and find that peace again. And so this idea of checking in, what am I feeling? I put a name to it. And then I do the why. Why am I feeling that way? I'm not going to allow an emotion to be ambiguous, right? It has to, what is that emotion trying to show me or point me towards? So what am I feeling? Why am I feeling like that? And then the next question is, what do I need? What do I need? And how am I going to get that need met? Is that something that I can do? Or do I need to pick up the phone and reach to my network? Do I need to, to come out of, isolation, if you will, and make sure that I'm connected? What is it that I need? And usually, and by the way, that takes a little time. Sometimes that's not in a 10-minute appointment with myself. Sometimes that's over a period of a couple of days, right? That's over really searching what's going on. But there will always be a breakthrough if you trust the process on that. And you will isolate that thing that you need, and then you can start to take steps towards getting that need met. And then peace returns. I think it's a little bit of a tactical strategy, and then kind of combined with a little bit of conceptual nature. It's organic, but it really does help me make sure that I'm very present to myself. When we hear being present to our customers, being present to our employees, I think we also have to be very present to ourselves.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's wonderful because, like you, I sometimes have had those feelings of dread. It's like the running in the background, some fear pops up. You just think, what is that all about? And I have a different way of dealing with it because it's finding the trigger, what triggers that feeling, what is it? And then finding that trigger. And once you can do that, you can disconnect the emotion from that trigger. You said something really interesting. You said, have trust. And trust and faith is such an important piece, isn't it? Because we're relying on our analytical, intellectual brains all the time to figure things out, fix things. But sometimes that doesn't work. And it just gives us a very crowded thinking, which gives us, keeps us unfocused. So having faith and having trust and bringing those into the big picture can transform our thinking, our situation.
Oh, absolutely. That what you just said is so powerful. I often, in the mentoring communities that I work with around the world, I often tell the partnerships, in a community setting, we meet from time to time to talk about what they're working on and what they're learning or discovering and what they're actually doing, like sharing some of those. I think if you can wrap community around any effort where you're trying to grow and learn, there's some value to that. It can amplify the discovery. But I will tell them, trust the process. And I probably say that to the point of where they want to shake me. Just trust the process. Yesterday, I was speaking to a client of mine, and he said, there's so much transformation going on within my organization, and I don't exactly know what that means to me. And I said, what do you want it to mean for you? What do you want it to look like? So I think that's another way of flipping the script. We can get really good at thinking about, what could happen? What could go wrong? We kind of feed the dread. We feed the fear. What if we were to flip that over and say, how do I want this to look? And what's one thing I could do right now to step closer to that outcome, right? So that, because I'm a big believer too that action and fear can't live in the same space at the same time. They are mortal enemies, and action will kill fear, and fear will paralyze action. So I'm a big believer in isolating. Sometimes it's that, what can I do? It's that tiny thing, and maybe in the light of the bigger picture, as we're looking at the landscape of our companies and what we're trying to accomplish, and it looks really big and scary. Maybe the thing I can do today is this big. Do it anyway. Do the little thing, and then do the next little thing, and then the next little thing. And before you know it, you'll turn around and you'll say, I'm doing it. I ride a horse fortunato in dressage, and I'm fairly new to the dressage discipline, and also very new to riding a horse, right? And I started later in life, right? Well, I think when you're a kid, you don't worry so much about falling off, but when you're older, there's a lot of
fear around falling. Yes,
a lot of fear, right? Climbing, and he's a wonderful horse. His name is Fortunato, but I rescued him, so he's fast. He's like a Ferrari. He can be a little naughty, and I really, but what I've learned from the dressage is this idea of of sitting back. This is kind of a paradox for me, because we just recently went to the next gate, which is the canter, and I was terrified. And so I would fold up into this fetal position, right? And I would just be clutching his face. And my instructor would say, you've got to sit back. You've got to sit back and relax. It's so counterintuitive. And then one day I did it. I sat back, I took a big breath, and off he went. And it was the most exhilarating experience of my life. But it meant that I had to break through the anxiety and say, I'm going to ride this. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to be okay. I'm ready for this. It's all those messages in your head. So, because I would say, what if I fall? What if I fall? What if I fall? And she would say, what if you fly? What if you fly? What if you fly? So sometimes we have to flip the script over and rehearse the outcome we want versus the outcome that we fear.
It's trusting the process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which can be the hardest.
And it was so counterintuitive. Like, she's saying, relax. And I'm looking at her like, are you kidding me? He's going to go fast. And and I'm up here off the ground, and you want me to just relax. And this was the interesting thing. She said, when you don't, you're squeezing him in places that you don't even realize, right? You're squeezing him. You're blocking his energy. He can't move his shoulders the way that you're asking him to. So your voice is saying one thing, your body is saying something else, and you're really confusing him. And I think that that's so true with business owners. Sometimes we're squeezing in places where we just need to let go, right? And trust the process.
Yes, absolutely.
I also think that this whole idea of value, if we can focus, even as a business owner myself, I don't have a huge company, right? I can relate to that, building it from ground zero and not having unlimited resources at your ready and trying to make all of those things work and stay focused on your vision and your strategy. The one secret that I've learned, and I think it's just a life secret, is if you can just focus on value, on creating value and driving value, opportunity is starting her car. I promise you. I promise. We don't have to worry about opportunity. We just have to focus on our value, because opportunity always chases value. And what's really brilliant about that is that I don't necessarily control all the opportunity out there in the big world, but I do control the release of my value, my skill set, right? My disciplines, the decisions that I make, how I use my day, how I connect with people, how I leave them better than I found them. I do influence and control that piece. And that's the piece that unlocks the opportunity. And that gives me a lot of peace, because when I start to get nervous about the economy or contracts or bookings or whatever, I just have to sit back, relax, trust the process, and remember, it's all about your value. What can you do to increase your value? And the opportunity will come.
And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that you've said, because as business owners, often for the first time, we have to go out there and we have to tell people about our services. And it's almost like we have to sell ourselves. And that's terrifying for so many people, because then they start doubting their value. Is my service worth what I'm asking? Will people pay that much? Will they see the value in it? Maybe I should reduce my prices. Maybe it's too scary to put my things out there. What if I get a no? And it just really can stop people in their tracks, can't it?
Oh, it can. I remember when I first started speaking, I came out of banking and I was just brand new. Nobody knew who I was. And someone had said, you need to talk to a gentleman by the name of Mark Sanborn. And I didn't even know who Mark was. And come to find out, he's a pretty famous guy and a great author and speaker. And he's just a wonderful human being, by the way. And he spent some time with me on the phone and gave me, I think I took 10 pages of notes. And I remember thinking, I don't know how much to charge. How do you figure out, what do I charge for a keynote? What do I charge for a workshop? And he said to me, I want you to charge the biggest amount that you can say without flinching. And then I want you to double it. And I remember, I thought, that's your strategy? And he said, and so at first, I will tell you what, I did a lot of free speeches. I did a lot of, I'll speak for free. And then I remember when I uttered my first, dollar sign, it was just, oh. But I think you're so right. If we undervalue, first of all, if we undersell ourselves or undervalue ourselves, it cheapens it cheapens the product, right? But there's something else there that I think is so important. It is about telling the story, because sometimes it's hard for us to tell our own story. And I use the example of even, Apple. When Jobs was at Apple originally, before he was fired and went off to Pixar and then came back, when he would do those famous product releases, he would talk about the technology and look what it can do, and it's really slick and it's really cool. When he came back from Pixar, he was a storyteller. And it now was, look what you can do with this technology. He made his audience, he made the buyer, the customer, the center of the story. And I think there's something to that. If we can make the buyer, whoever the buyer is, if we can make them the center of the story, two things happen. One is they can actually, to some degree, even visually experience the value that you're offering. But also, you give yourself emotional permission to talk about what the impact is that you can have. And sometimes I think that releases us because we feel uncomfortable selling ourselves. And so maybe the key is, maybe we don't have to sell ourselves. Maybe we sell the value, and then we connect that. Here's what that will mean for you.
Perfect. I love it. And this is so spot on with how many people worry about this type of, that time when they speak to a prospect and what they're going to say and how they're going to say it, and will they be believed and trusted and all of those things. And something else I'd like to pick up on that you said is to focus on what you want. And this is the opposite of what most of us do most of the time. And I know personally, when I have those days when I keep saying to myself, focus only on what I want today, focus only on what I want, and I get into that mantra, my day goes so smoothly. And it's such a delight. And even the boring bits of my job, even they seem absolutely fine and in flow. So focusing on what you want, because we can choose what we think about any moment of any day. And we can choose about to focus on what we don't want, or we can choose to focus on what we want. And it's actually as simple as that, isn't it? But it's remembering to do it.
It is. And it's also something you said earlier, to connect those dots, is that to recognize that trigger, to recognize the moment that fear has knocked on the door, or that worry or that dread or that anxiety has knocked on the door, and then stop it right there, flip the script right there. I wrote in my second book, Grow, I wrote about the idea of worry and how many people have really mastered the art of it, right? A lot of my clients will say, yes, I have a master's degree in worry. And so one of the little hacks that I use is to say, okay, if you're a worrier, and that, by the way, can become habit, right? We can become habitually anxious. And really, that's kind of wiring the brain in a way that we were not designed as human beings to function like that. That's not how we're supposed to go. But the brain will accommodate you if you want to wire it that way. And it can kind of spin out and spin out and spin out. And then, oh, this, a bright, shiny thing. And we can just go down this cycle, right? A downward spiral. So I think that, if you are a worrier, one way to start breaking that worry habit, and this has worked well for me, I'm going to set an appointment with worry, right? I'm going to say, okay, at 3 o'clock today, if I'm going to worry myself silly for 15 minutes. I'm even going to take notes. I'm going to meet with worry. I'm going to listen to her. I'm going to take some notes. And then if I'm tempted up to that 3 p.m. appointment to worry, no, it's not your time yet, worry. You're in at 3 to 3:15. That's the audience you have. And so I can stop myself. It gives me permission to say, nope, not yet. I'll worry about that at the appointed time. I contain it in a 15 or 20-minute space of time. And then what I started to do was invite gratitude at the end of the meeting. Because what I found out is that worry doesn't want to show up for meetings where gratitude is also at the table, right? Then you start being thankful for, and really, I think taking gratitude to another place too, and it's to say, think about your accomplishments. Like if there's this idea of appreciative inquiry that I use a lot with my clients, and so appreciative inquiry is where if you find yourself in that anxiety space, right, is to stop and think about a time when you solved the problem, when you overcame the obstacle, when you achieved, right? Think of a time when you succeeded, and then unpack it. That wasn't an accident. You were believing some things. You were doing some things. You were using some skills, right? So you unpack it. What contributed to my success in that time? And then you have a list of things that you believed and skills that you used. You have unpacked it, and then you forklift that over and you place it right on top of the worry that's current. How can I be more intentional with those factors right now? They've worked well for me in the past, but even through the process of appreciative inquiry, you are flipping the script, right? You're now thinking about a time when you were successful, and you're thinking about how you made that happen. And it puts you in a completely different mental space.
Yeah, it's really being aware, isn't it? And catching it when it happens. And then when you can catch it, and then you know that actually there's just low consciousness thought going on.
Yeah.
And that you will come back up again. Because that's your natural place to be, isn't it?
I agree. I think that's been a big discovery for me. And I wish I would have discovered it sooner. Because I think that you called it running in the background. That's so true. It's that background noise. And we even stop paying attention to it. It's a little bit like the music in the elevator, right? We aren't even really conscious, or the operating system in a computer. And so if we can pull it forward, then we can do something about it. But I think it becomes habitual. And I think that it becomes a drag on our energy, right? It's like energy sort of leaking out of us. So if we can become more aware of it, as you said, what triggers it, what's creating it, and then we can use some of these tools to then flip the script, change the dynamic. I think it's powerful. And that also can be a habit, right? We can rewire the brain to be, at first it probably will be more of an intentional sort of, I have to think about this, I have to stop and think through it. But over time, what you'll find is that it will become just as natural as worry was, right? It will become just as natural for you to catch it and then do something about it. Another little hack that I use, and this was a little scary for me, is that the internal script, we stopped listening to that too. What are you saying to yourself? That self-talk, that critical voice, like when you make a mistake or you look in the mirror, what do you say to yourself? I kept a log of my self-talk for 1 week a few years ago. And I'll tell you, it was horrible. What I was beating myself up from the inside out. And I believe that if we're doing that, it's really hard to go out there and be dynamic, right? And be energized and be optimistic and be motivated. I was shocked at how negative my self-talk was, how brutal it was. If I talked to you that way, you'd never speak to me again. And by the way, I wouldn't think of talking to another human being the way that I was talking to myself. And so I also discovered some of those through that process. I discovered some of my underlying beliefs, some of the things that I believed that were limiting me. So one of the beliefs that I uncovered through the process, one of the patterns that started to emerge was, it's very important for people to like you. And I found that I was really just tripping over myself all of the time, because heaven forbid somebody would be unhappy with me. That's a lot of pressure. Like, holding yourself accountable for the happiness of every human being on the planet is a lot of pressure. And I remember crossing through that belief and saying, it's more important to make a difference. Liking me isn't the point. If you like me, great. It's not that I hope people won't like me, but that can't be my goal, right? That can't be my focal point. That sets you up for rejection and all kind of self-editing and self-monitoring, and it's a weird space to be in. And plus, it puts the focus on you versus putting the focus out there. I found a few beliefs that were limiting, and so it's an exercise that I often encourage people to do. Identify the beliefs that hold you back, and then replace them. You cross them out and you rewrite those scripts, and then you keep telling yourself, those are affirmations now. It doesn't happen instantly, right? I think that people-pleasing gene was in me for a long time. It took a while for me over and over saying it's important to make a difference, right? It's important to have impact before that started to settle down in my heart and my soul as a real belief. And at first, it was a little bit like, looking in the mirror and saying, I love myself. And you're thinking, I don't love myself. But you keep doing that, right? Those affirmations. So I actually took the self-talk and found, what am I believing about myself? What are the core beliefs? And there were some empowering ones too. I actually had a belief that I can do anything I set my mind to. I can overcome. I can make it happen. But there were a handful of limiting beliefs, and the way that I felt about those is it was a little bit like driving down the motorway with your emergency brake fully engaged on your car. Like, you may be getting somewhere, but you are tearing up the car. Trust me, I've done it. So the idea is, can I release that brake of self-limiting beliefs so that I can get further, faster? And you know what? Enjoy it more. Enjoy the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, we can enjoy the journey of being a business owner, or we can really be stressed out by it. And again, it comes back to a choice. And I do the limiting belief work with clients, and I've got rid of a lot of limiting beliefs myself. And one of the most common ones is, what makes me good enough is having people think well of me, needing to be validated by other people, worrying that we're falling short of their expectations, and beating ourselves up, calling ourselves a failure, a loser. And this is the talk that most people live with. Not all the time, but for some of the time. And isn't it interesting, because we're so busy chasing strategies and the next business mentor and this and that, but we rush past our thinking. How many people actually stop and take note of their thinking, like you've done and like I've done and that my clients do? Because our thinking is our greatest asset. Everything comes from our thought. Every action we take comes from the thought we happen to be thinking in that moment. And I don't believe that we can spend, the best time we can spend is on our thinking. Because
I agree. That's receptivity. And you're so right about that. I think when I discovered for myself, I didn't have a reflective bone in my body. I was addicted to action. I was always just taking action. And when I learned how to be more reflective, to slow it down, and to really pay attention to what was going on. And something else that you said that I think this is a huge message. This is so important. It starts with the thought, right? It starts with the belief. As you said, every action, every outcome was born from a belief. And I think that we have a prophet living inside of us, right? Predicting the future. And so really we have to manage that process of it. And if we can start there, that will make every strategy, right, more successful. Everything we do will be more successful, and everything we do will be more fulfilling and have more meaning to it. I agree.
And we'll have more fun along the way. Why wait until we've made our first million to have fun? Why can't we just have it now? We can have it in this moment. We don't have to wait for it, do we?
I agree. I so agree. We're supposed to enjoy this journey.
Every moment of it. I could talk for hours about this, but we're really running out of time. But I'd love to know how can our listeners, how can they find out more about you and your work?
Oh, they can always just go to where my name is, Dondi Scumaci, right? DondiScumaci.com is my website. There's actually a gift for your listeners up there. A free copy of my latest book, Career Moves, is up there, so they can download that for free. And I hope that your listeners and your clients will open their gift. Twitter, Dondi Scumaci, Facebook, Dondi Scumaci. There's some blogs and some different tools and things up there, but it has just been a huge pleasure to speak with you. I can relate to so many things that you talked about, and I also will tell you that your message resonates. I think your message resonates because we are, at the end of the day, in a human condition, right? And so it's lovely to have that mission. It's lovely. The mission that you have, I think, is a lovely world-changing vision. How we think differently so that we can be everything we were really designed to be.
Absolutely. And thank you, because what you've said has resonated so much with me as well, and I'm sure with our listeners. Because at the end of the day, we're here to play and have fun. We're not here to take things too seriously and get upset and worry about things all the time. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful having you. And for everyone who's been listening and watching, thank you so much for being with us. Till next time. Bye-bye.